Savitri.
Good evening, Ravi. And we are having a time with this Mother's Day podcast.
Okay, it's so weird. This is so for our listeners is that this is our third go at it.
Yes.
We forgot to record the first time. The second time it was just energetically crazy, and now we're having technical difficulties out the wazoo. Last week, when we went to record for Mother's Day, the Schumann resonance went wild.
hmm
And so I thought it was interesting that our mother, Gaia, her energy has been fluctuating,
Yeah,
really spiking lately.
yeah. I follow on YouTube Stephen Burns, and he's great. He has an update every day, and he's tuned into all the latest and greatest technology so we can actually see sunspots occur and he's good at what he does. So if anyone wants to check out what's going on with the Earth and the Sun and the relationship from a scientific standpoint, that man has it covered, and it is his passion, and you can tell he's excellent at what he does.
So,
So I just thought I'd give a little plug for that because he does talk about the Schumann resonances. He talks about the uh, the sun's activities, and there will be a coronal hole. Maybe it's today it was turning toward us. I don't know. I'll have to go out and listen tonight. But I will tell you that I had some technology problems this morning and yesterday. And so we just sort of take it with a grain of salt. What else can
right.
we do? Because it is what it is, and this is our environment and our platform, and I'm just grateful we're able to have a dialogue tonight.
So here we go. Third time's the charm. We'll see
hmm
what
Right, right.
what we can do with it
Yeah,
because yeah, it's been a bit of a journey just to get here. So on this episode, yeah,
yeah,
Mother's Day. It's a touchy topic for some. It's a
hmm
interesting day, of course, one where we honor our mothers, and for some people that comes with really warm and wonderful feelings, and for others maybe who have lost mothers, that's not so easy to deal with, or who don't have a great relationship with moms, or maybe who have relationships with other mother figures in their life. There's just a lot. It encompasses many forms, many ways of being.
yeah. And there are so many variables that are thrown into this, not to describe it as a variable, but it is a very emotional time for me, I'll admit, for many reasons, and you covered them. There are times when things were fine and times when they were not so fine. And so the memories emerge, and when someone's no longer on the planet and these days of memory come up, there really is just a one-way street as far as the communication is concerned. I can travel down that street and I can have all the memories that I want, but I have no way to get closure on things that might have benefit from some closure. And other times when it would be great just to sit and have a dialogue or go out somewhere to eat, do things like that that we used to do. So yes, it's a day that brings a lot of angst for people, ennui for others, and joy for others. So we had a woman. I'll just go back to how do we get here with Mother's Day? How did this happen? We had a woman named Anna Jarvis who just had one of those magical, seemingly perfect relationships with her mother. And when her mother passed away, she became an advocate for a relationship with mothers, and that we need to honor our mothers and bring a day into into awareness so that we can focus on taking care of our moms, doing things for them. And she first did her first speech about it, I guess you could say, in a church in 1908. And then it was adopted. Um, Congress took it up and they uh, designated the day. So we have Mother's Day. And a lot of things have happened with Mother's Day since those days. It's gotten a little bit commercial, maybe a lot commercial. We're urged to buy things, many different products. Um, Mothers are urged to take advantage of self care. And I'll look at myself because I offer Reiki and meditation and yoga. So I've already started that dialogue. You do these things for yourself, come into your inner being. And so I don't know. What do you think about Mother's Day?
I'd like to go back to what you said about it being, it can be challenging for you. I think it can be challenging for a lot of people. And maybe for some, and maybe for many people, it's just, a super warm, fuzzy, lovely holiday. And they're thinking, well, what are you talking about? And I think all of those are valid. And I think that it is natural that all of those things could occur. And maybe they occur all at the same time when this day comes up for you. Because I believe that our relationships with our mothers are very karmic.
They
And I
are.
think that, yeah, so when we incarnate together, we're working through uh, some things together in this life, whether that's, they're things that occur um, together in this lifetime or from ancestral wounds that we bring in with
Mhm.
us. We're working through things, we're teasing things out. Um, I was a difficult teen, let's say that. And I remember my mother saying to me, "Oh, you just wait till you have kids." And, I grew up to not have kids. Um, and I was, I was kind of like, ha ha, fooled you. And then the universe said, yeah, no, and gave me some nieces, one of who is pretty much my mini me. So, there's things that we work out through our lineage and our, those ancestral wounds that we're healing. And it took a long time and a lot of growth and evolution. And I am, um, mm, I want to say, at peace with my relationship with my mother. We have, of course, challenging times, especially because, as my sister said, we are the same person on opposite ends of the spectrum. So, she's like a mirror. Um, but we and other people, we see what we want to see in ourselves and what we don't want to see in ourselves.
Well, true.
And
Right.
when
Yeah.
when I'm frustrated with her, I could turn that around and see exactly how and why she can be frustrated with me. So it's chiseled me, and our relationship is still developing, as I think it should, evolve. And I hope that we only continue to grow closer because we work to understand each other through hard times, especially if we've talked about, so, the socioeconomic or socio-political, climate that is, and, our belief structures are very different, as far as, religious versus spiritual. So all that to say, for
Mhm.
me, it's typically, a really happy time, but gosh darn it, there's been some really rough times growing up, with my mom, as I think we all experience, probably some challenging times. And like you said, maybe there are folks who have that just really close relationship, and there's not a lot of friction or um, dissonance. But either, regardless of where you are on that spectrum, dear listener, I think just know that it's all normal and okay, because it's a very karmic relationship. And
Yeah.
we all, as especially women, but I think as humans too, have that capability or have the opportunity to tap into that divine feminine part of ourselves and be nurturing to others or allow others to nurture us in that way that maybe we didn't get from a mother, or maybe as we're not mothers ourselves can provide that nurturing in ways in our community, with our chosen family. So there's just so many different ways of being, and existing together in that mother type relationship, that I think it's fair to feel any which way, and also to honor whomever in your life fills that space.
Yeah.
That's where I fall.
Yeah. That brings to mind it's actually a humorous story, I have to say, when I think about it and I mention it and maybe, reiterate the details of it. It always brings a smile, sometimes outright laughter. But to give you just a sense of uh, the thought process that my mother had in her life, and I'm still figuring it out. And I have children of my own who are adults, so I'm figuring it out from that perspective as well. But we hadn't seen each other because we lived lived about 650 miles away, and so there would be times when we would see each other on the holidays, like maybe alternate Christmases, because when you're married and you have a family and that family lives in the other direction, 600 or 700 miles away, you divide your time, at least what you think is equally. So I guess it had been about a year and a half or so since I had seen her, and we went back to visit for one of the holidays. And she hadn't really said much about this, and recently, recently being in decades. And we sat down to dinner, and I picked up my fork with my left hand and just started eating as if this is that's who I am. That's what I do. And she looked at me and was shocked. She had a shocked look on her face. She was stunned, and she just said, "Are you really still left-handed?" And I had no idea what to say. Now, I have to say, because of a mother-daughter relationship, my first inclination was not a great one. It felt very critical, and as if we were going to make you small because you're left-handed. And that's what happens, I think, even as an adult, when you have that dialogue or you come into those moments where there's something about you were talking about reflecting ourselves back and seeing what who we are. When something like that shows up, there really isn't much you can say. I chose to be silent, which was probably a good thing. But I just said a simple yes, I am left-handed. And there it is. So we have these little nuances that are like that. Now that may seem like, oh, I wish that's the only thing my mother was saying about me, because others will think and have experiences that are much more intense, because the mother-daughter relationship, as you mentioned, can be divine feminine connection, and it also can be uh, very antagonistic. And just because we're in the same family doesn't necessarily mean we would choose everyone in the same family as friends. And as we begin to mature and gain our own perspectives, things get a little rocky in families sometimes, and especially in a very conservative family that I grew up in as well. And so any of the things that were even slightly out of bounds for the way that the world was structured by my parents uh, really became a big issue, a very large issue. So I mentioned a tiny thing, something that we can smile about and go, you know, that's mom, you know. But that just was the tip of the iceberg in
Sure.
the way that we chose to see each other. Maybe it was a choice, maybe it was just a curse or a blessing. It's hard to say which one it was. Yeah.
Uh, I am the outside the box person in my family, right? We might say the black sheep of the family, the one who, is always the outlier doing something different, thinking differently. And
Isn't
that,
it fun?
what's that?
Isn't it fun?
Well, I mean, I thought it was, but I put probably a lot of stress on my folks from time to time, especially in my younger years. And of course, as you get older and you see the sacrifice that your
Mhm.
parents make, and you, of course, see the you can sense the connection, that your mother has, the angst, the worry, the prayers I still get prayed over from my mom. Um, but I I really appreciate that she's evolved. She's allowed me to evolve in my own way, I think more so than ever before. And I respect her for that because I know it's really challenging coming from the very, very different mindsets that we have. And it reminds me that I need to give her grace to hold space for her beliefs and her way of being as well, to help ease some of that tension that we can feel in relationships. Um, because for quite some time, that was I pushed, I pushed the boundaries and I pushed things, and I know that that's tough for parents to deal with. I think now, you can look back and see, oh wow, I really had it pretty good. Um, so that just comes, that's just from my perspective. I think there's a certain level of maturity that you reach where not, and I don't want to, I want to be clear that, there are boundaries where I know that some of us are in relationships, familial relationships that are really quite abusive, and it is always okay to step away from those. I don't think that, I think it is okay to create boundaries and step back from relationships that are harmful for us.
Mhm.
At the same time, I've learned to, hopefully I say I've learned, it's a consistent practice, right?
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
practicing would be a better way of saying that, to give grace and space where I also want it in my life. Um, and maybe that to some sounds so rudimentary, but I think in that relationship where there's that dynamics, taking a step back and saying, how would I really treat this person if this were just a person? How would I want to be treated if this were just a person? It helps to neutralize that dynamic. And I've found that it gives me a little more grace and space and compassion, because I know that my mom has, and I think, as we look through our family histories, we can see that our parents, very more often than not, are doing the best they can with what they have.
Sure, we
And
didn't get, we birthed a child, but we didn't get a manual. And
right,
so we do what we have learned or what we've observed or what we choose to be educated additionally about how to raise children. And there's so many different ways out there that it can be overwhelming if you're a new parent trying to figure it
oh
out.
man,
And
yeah,
we
you don't
forget
get,
sometimes that we're living a life with others, and if we get really analytical about it, and I can do that in a moment, you probably know that about me, but if we get really analytical about it, everything becomes a something. And often things that friends or associates, workers that you work with, people, your peers, um, would say to you, like if someone said to me, "Oh, you're left-handed, have you always been left-handed?" That would have been totally different.
Exactly.
Why was it so insulting to me? Because it felt critical. It felt like it was making me small. She didn't approve of me, and we all want our mothers to approve of us. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much neglect or abuse someone may have gotten from their parent. The child always wants to gain approval from the parent. And years later, depending on what the young relationship was during the young child stage, there is that hole in themselves to fill with approval from the parent. And everyone, I think, does it to some varying degree, depending on the nature of the relationship. So I try to think about, okay, as I come through memories, because, we're coming into the day, it's coming up in a couple days. Um, and by the way, we're recording on Thursday night, so this is not Mother's Day yet for us, but will be. But as we go into Mother's Day, I start thinking about things that maybe I took them too personally. Now that I have been, as you and I talk about practices and detachment and the neutral mind and really working on that, I can bring some of that to my memories and think, okay, let me do a little discerning here and see if that happened today, how would I respond? Now, that's difficult to put yourself into that situation because, of course, the other person in person has an energetic that's going to be a response as well. But, thinking about that, I would have to say there are a handful of things that I probably would have just like let go, you know, and not really been bunchy about. But there are things that I think deserve to be bunchy. And we know that that happens in families. And it's just so interesting being a mother and seeing my two adult children and the directions that they've chosen to take with their lives. And um, it's nothing that I would have imagined at the time of their birth. And that's the other fallacy I think that gets into parents and child's relationships is that parents want the world for their children. Even if they are angry and have anger management problems or they go into abusive behaviors, those are things they're working out on their own. But you could stop and ask them, they would still say, well, I want the best for my child. They may not be giving them the best in any capacity, but they still, somewhere deep inside, want the best for their child. So when we birth a child, as a mother who has done that twice, you have these dreams. Oh, and you watch the child unfold, and it's so amazing and wonderful. And you start seeing little talents here and there, and you encourage those talents. And sometimes, and I'll admit there were times where, I get caught up when my daughter showed great talent in music and art. And I wanted to just really make that happen for her. My son was the left brain guy. He was all about science and discovery and gadgets and doing things. And I wanted to make that happen for him too. And over time, they've modified those things and they have evolved into those as places in their life for the way they live. And as an adult, as the mother, I have observed, and I'll say I've probably gone a little deeper than observing, on many occasions for encouraging or saying, but You do this so well. Mm, it may not have been their dream. It may have been a dream that I was having because I saw something in their unfoldment that um, that, in my opinion, would have been fabulous for them to do. But that's their life, not my life living vicariously through them. So, from a parent perspective, I'll turn it to that. Um, I think if mothers were really honest and looked in the mirror and said, "What do I see?" they they want certain things for their children, and it often goes way beyond just food and shelter and clothing, the basic necessities, which hopefully, I know there are many people that struggle even getting those things in place in a home or to have a home. But the mother child relationship is still there. And so I kind of went down a rabbit hole with that, uh, just visualizing all of the different ways within our collective that people experience a mother child relationship, a child mother relationship. So, yeah, it's time for some introspection and not too many expectations, just going to be in the moment and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to spending time with my mom, and I know that we always spend some time together, my mom and my sister and I, and over the years, I've come to reflect a little deeper and always see her a little more clearly. Um, and of course, I appreciate her and love her very much. And I look forward to that. And as a collective, I think that this day is, I think it is important to honor that nurturer in all of us and hold that space for the ideal and recognize the women or caregivers in our lives who do provide that care for us.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it is, wherever you are in your relationship, I hope, dear listeners, that this is a day where you can embrace that sense of nurturing within yourself.
When I was thinking about this today, I was thinking about the first thing that comes to mind, which is, you know, very, very prominent. Everyone hears about it, the inner child.
Mm.
And I thought maybe it's the inner mother, where we have an inner mother where we can nurture and mother ourselves and others. But it seems, and I know talking to people who are mothers of young children all the way through to adult, and then the grandchildren, and that is that there is a sense of sacrifice, and I will just say the words overdoing it to the point where you have mother burnout. And that becomes a really um, interesting dynamic in a relationship because the mother is going to be covering that up so the child doesn't experience it. So when we come to that, I think as a mother and people that aren't mothers or people that care um, for children in in a LGBTQ relationship. It's about nurturing, and it's about nurturing each other, and it's about nurturing yourself. And so I'm going to think a little bit more about an inner mother
Hmm.
method or perspective in alignment with the inner child. But to me, when I thought of it actually yesterday, as I was considering Mother's Day and knowing we were going to be going third time's the charm on this one, I thought the inner child, and I apologize before I say this because I know this is a really important concept, and I'm not meaning to um, create negativity around it. Just a perception of mine and observation is that when we work on the inner child, we still remain a victim because we are addressing that experience from the perspective of a child. When we turn it around and we become our own mothers and we create an inner mother, and it doesn't matter, what your gender preference is or your male or female, there is an inner mother that takes care of who you are. So more on that maybe to come. I don't know. It may be a passing fancy and be gone by next week, but I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, no, that does remind me of the time, I listened to, I believe I mentioned this on a previous episode, so I don't want to go too much into it. But I remember listening to a Peter, Paul, and Mommy Too
Hmm.
uh, CD back in the day, a long time ago. And recently, not too many years ago, it kind of came back up. I mean, you go through waves of listening to things and then they fall off the radar. And this song came back up somehow. And I thought, oh, I haven't listened to that album in a while. I'm going to go listen to it. And I started playing it and just started sobbing. And I really
Oh,
realized how I had reparented myself through that album. And so I'm really resonating with what you're saying about that inner mother because as much as we do talk about the inner child, it does take an inner mother to nurture that child as well.
mhm.
And that is a moment when I realized, I didn't realize it at the time, but I realized after many years later how that was an exercise in reparenting myself in some
Mhm.
ways. And so I like that point that you bring up, and I think that would be a great topic to talk more around sometime
Mhm.
because it definitely plays a role in our healing and our journey to come back to wholeness, recognize the wholeness in ourselves. um,
Mhm.
when I say healing, I don't mean, fixing, but so often, we take on layers or we lose pieces of ourselves or they become hidden to us as we, you know, go through the traumas of growing up, of life. And
Right.
as we come into a different era, and we can start to re examine those wounds and find ways to nurture them and recognize, see ourselves through the eyes of a mother, right? That person that's whole and, perfect in their eyes. So,
I'm glad we went third time is the charm. And I appreciate the stories that you shared today and lots to contemplate, which we do as these days are brought before us. And we recognize that we have a community, an energetic community, all pointing at Mother's Day, bringing whatever they bring or avoiding it, which is another way of bringing energy to it. So thank you for tonight, and I'm glad we got a chance to try again.
Yeah, no, it was good to hear some stories from you too. And to our listeners, may the day bring you comfort and nurturing and from yourself or a loved one, and some time to reflect as well. And we'd love to hear from you too. So feel free to chat with us here under the video. And you can always email us at consciouseyes108@gmail.com. And
Yes, and
until then,
our next episode, we're going to be doing a potpourri of the comments.
oh, that's right.
So we'll be bringing the comments from uh, quite a few of the videos, actually, about 30 of them, and just recognizing some of the comments that were made and responding. And we thank you all who have already commented, and we look forward to more in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, so send us a note. And thanks for being here. And until next time, Satnam.
Namaste.